please hit the notification bell and also hit the like button. This helps in our ratings with the videos and we appreciate it. And be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Grumman Pilot's YouTube channel. And today we're going to revisit our front wheel maintenance video that we did April 27th of 2017. I'd like to thank Dan Keene, who was my shop monkey holding the camera this whole time while we were annualing his airplane. And we had lots of rain during that event. Matter of fact, so much rain that the runway flooded, and Matt and I and Dan had to roll up our pants and go out there and unclog some drains to get the runway back active. And now that we have the nose gear out, we're going to take it over and bolt it on the wall where we have a steel beam with two holes that match up for the front strut. It secures it to the wall, holds the tire upside down so that we can work at everything very conveniently.
Now it can't go anywhere. We got rain sound effects.
Yeah, man.
No, it's not
coming down hard.
Oh, it is. All right, so now we've got it in the fixture. So now we just take it apart. 2 half-inch bolts on the main axle. That will bring the tire straight out. And then the tire just comes out completely.
There you go. Alright.
So now that we've taken the main axle that held the main tire in out, the only thing holding the fairing on the entire assembly are these little peg bolts right here, 8 and 4s, one on this side, one on this side. We're going to take those out and then the fairing will just slip out. You'll also want to take off the tow bar pegs as well because they'll catch in the fairing on you. And then we can attack the big monster castle nut and everything in the bevel stack, which controls your nose shimmy or your lack of nose shimmy. Stay tuned for more. That way you can grab them and then pry it out. And by the way, you don't have to worry about reusing this cotter pin. They're fairly cheap. They're about 12 cents.
So you're not breaking the bank?
Nah. No, but there are people who literally ask me, how many times can you reuse a one-time star washer? Do we have to replace the star washer after we've crushed it? It's a one-time star washer. What do you think? Until it fails, which is one time. So we're just taking the castle nut off now, and the entire bevel stack is here below it. This is a 1-inch castle nut, so a 1-inch socket comes in really handy. And you will get fairly dirty fairly quickly. This is not the cleanest part of the airplane. Take out our bevel stack. As you see, we have a stainless steel thrust washer. 1, 2, 3, 4 bevels. And then another stainless steel nut so that the bevel stack doesn't cut into the aluminum. Now that we have all that off, the fairing just comes right off the airplane. Rotate it 180 degrees out so we don't tear up the bearing. And we now have disassembled. So that's pretty dirty.
That's dirty.
Yeah. We'll clean all that.
All right.
So since we're going to leave this all on there,
yep.
We are going to clean the spindle and check the spindle. And this is your 1 or 2 bronze. You have 2 bronze thrust washers, and what they do is they set the depth so that we don't destroy this O-ring, which is in good shape. The O-ring is keeping the water from coming into the well. So we'll clean all this up, put some fresh grease on it, and begin the process of reassembly.
Okay.
We're going to start the reassemble now. What we've done is we've cleaned the spindle, we've put some grease on the O-ring and put the O-ring in place so we don't forget, and we stacked both of the bronze thrust washers. Now we're going to put the fork on. Now the fork is on, and we can spin it into final position and make sure it's fully seated. And we do that by making sure we hit the stop. So now we just put the bevel stack in place. We've got them all clean and ready to go back. So the first thing to protect your fork goes the big stainless steel, and then the bevel stack. This is the part that drives people crazy. So you make a little flying saucer out of the middle ones, one cup the other way on the outside, and the final one cup the other way. Then your stainless steel thrust, and that is nothing more than an AN 960 1016L thin version in stainless steel, and then the castle nut.
Back in 2018, I had Ken Blackman draw up in my notebook all 3 configurations for the bevel stack.
The nice thing about having it bolted to the side, as soon as we get the nut down and we reattach the fairing back to everything, then we can pull right here without the tire in here, and we can get our pull test so we know how to set the castle nut and then come back and put the cotter pin in. So stay tuned for. Okay, so we put a preload on the castle nut, and now we're going to reattach the fairing to the fork. It's a lot easier to do it like this. These are these 2 AN4 bolts, and what they do is they just simply, we're going to snug them down, and we're going to put the axle in for final set. What holds the fairing onto the fork are these 2 bolts and the axle bolt that goes all the way through and holds the main tire. So before I tighten them down and can't move them, we're going to go ahead and put the axle bolt all the way through by hand. So now we know that when we tighten these down, everything will fit when we go to put the tire back in just a minute. But before we do that, we're going to put the tow bar pegs back on. Those are a 1/2 inch bolt. Okay, so now the fairing is reattached. Tow bar pegs. Nothing fancy about them, they just go in. And all these do is give you a place to put your tow bar for moving the airplane around by hand. Or you can practice for the broken tow bar competition. So now that's all back in place. Now all we're going to do now is get a spring scale and check the... So this is the factory tool by Chetlin. It's about a $379 spring tension gauge, and all we want to do is pull on it, and we don't get any movement until 22 pounds, which is the upper limit. Or you can go to the camping center of Walmart. It has a little hook that we bent straight, put a little piece of tubing on, and you can do the same thing with this by pulling. And again, now that we've pulled a little bit of the grease out, it now pulls at 21 pounds. So that's a proper tension. We're just going to line it up for the castle nut now to get a cotter pin in. Then we'll be installing the nose tire.
No one's here to save money flying.
Alright, so the cotter pin goes in. Get it straight, and I'm going to have to tap it in. And then the cotter pin goes in counterintuitively. It goes in from back to forward to be splayed out. And the reason for that is if you didn't have wheel fairings, if it went this way and splayed out, they say that taxiing in tall grass or landing in tall grass could grab the leg, straighten it out, and allow the cotter pin to work out. I find that highly unlikely, but this is the way they say to do it, so that's the way we do it. And then finally, not my prettiest one, but it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, now we've got it all back together, it's time to put the tire in place. And there's only one tricky bit for the tire. If you look in here on the axle, you'll see that these 2 cut flat spots on each side of the fork. When you look at the tire, now I've got to make sure I do this right. This is, I do it this way and it goes on the airplane. This is the pilot side. You'll notice that in these little hubs, you have these little, of course they're called grease caps. They go in the end of your axle, and there's a flat spot on each side. You want to line them up so that when you drop the tire in, the tire drops right into the track. Those flats meet up with the other flats, and then you can push the axle through, and that keeps the whole assembly from rotating in the airplane. And now we've got the axle almost all the way through. And now we do. And now we'll just put the bolt on and tighten it. So to put the nut on, we actually have a 1/2-inch socket that we've shoved a paper towel in, so that when we put the nut in, it sits right at the very end, so we can just reach in there, feel the axle, twist it and get it started. And then it's a matter of now getting the other sockets and putting it to final torque value. Okay, then when you go to tighten it, we want to give the tire a spin, and we don't want the tire to go more than 1 revolution. So I'm going to watch the valve stem on this side. It's right at 1 revolution. I'll put a little bit more bearing preload on, and now it doesn't go a full revolution. If you don't get enough preload on the bearing, it will roll in flight either forward, and I've seen them roll backwards in flight, which is the craziest thing to see when you're flying formation. But it will transmit a vibration to the airframe, and it feels like roughness in the engine, so you don't know where it's coming from. So if you have a vibration you can't identify, even the mains can roll in flight, and that will put a vibration on the aircraft. And then the only other place that can vibrate on the airplane is on the rubber gear legs. If the rubber gear legs have come unglued, they can balloon out and go boop, 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 which again will translate a vibration to the airframe, which you will think would be engine roughness. So now we're just going to check the tire pressure, take this off the wall and go put it back in. Okay, so we've got the nose back up into the receiver so that we don't mess up the close tolerance bolts, and these are fairly expensive. They're like $24, almost $30 a bolt, and they are very close tolerant. We've taken an old one and put a bullet nose on it, and we drive it into the airplane, which forces the strut to be nice, and now we can put the bolt in without fear of anything being misaligned. There. And put the nuts on and you are done. So that pretty much wraps us up. Thank you all for watching Grumman Pilot's YouTube channel. Have a good day working on your airplane, and even a more fun day flying your airplane.
And in addition, there's a little treat about 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing web work and other stuff. Here's my cat coming down, playing with a mouse and meowing and just having a good time with me in the wee hours of the night. So I thought I'd throw this into you as a little treat. Y'all please enjoy.